Just down the snowmobile trail in the small town of Allman, Wisconsin, the Poggle family has gathered up a one-of-a-kind tractor collection, which includes some crawlers you probably won't see anywhere else. We were lucky to get one last look at the collection before it was sold on an online-only auction. We had a chance to interview brothers Dennis and Alan about their father's collection, while they worked with Allman Vintage Power to move and photograph the tractors for the upcoming auction.
I guess how Dad got into collecting is he started out, or his father started out in the road construction business way back in about 1931. So as you can see, he started out in earth moving type of equipment and thrashery type of equipment. My grandfather used to do custom thrashing around. So when you get into road construction, if you look around the building, they started out basically with thrashing machines, old tractors. The Rumley oil pulls are probably the first that were owned by the family. None of these were actually owned by the family, but that's what they started out with. Then they moved into the road construction business, which goes into the Caterpillar 2 tons, I think, were the first crawler tractors owned by the family. And then as my dad went through that from all the way up to probably 1988, active in the highway construction business. Then he started collecting a little bit before that, so he started out with the Caterpillar 2 tons, and then I suppose his obsession with Caterpillar took over, and he had to have one of every model. If you see the 10s, 15s, 20, 22s, all the way up through the big 60 that's behind us here. And as far as rubber tires go or steel wheel tractors go, you can look around. He liked items that were more rare, limited editions, that type of tractors. As far as any singular piece, it's hard to pick one out. Like I said, he's very partial to a couple of the oil pulls that were early in his collection. They reminded of him when he was a kid, you know, under 10 years old when my grandpa did thrashing. So he was very attached to the oil pulls, or maybe the Cat 2 tons was the first crawler owned by the construction company business. So that's a little bit, there's stories on all of them. As you go around, the Diesel 40 outside was always a special one to him because it came to in about 15 boxes and they put it all together. There's a story in the Antique Caterpillars Collection magazine. It was called No Caterpillar is an Orphan. They did 3 full issues on just that one crawler alone.
We learned that there was one tractor in the Poggle collection which had an interesting former owner.
Don't have any direct history. The story we were told, apparently it was probably if it was originally purchased by Douglas MacArthur for his sister Barbara, who runs Swatworth Farms in Illinois. Then it was Barbara's there, and I guess he spent a lot of time at the farm and ran at the farm. And back in the early 90s, my dad purchased it directly from Barbara. Barbara MacArthur would be Douglas's sister out of Swatworth Farms in Illinois.
This tractor is an oil pull Rumley 2040 Model G, which was built from 1918 to 1924 in LaPorte, Indiana. Another feature that makes this tractor unique is the original full-length canopy. This was an available factory option, but few tractors with these canopies remain. If you're into vintage big crawler power, it doesn't get a whole lot better than a Caterpillar 60 with the original snow cab.
The 60 kind of goes back to Dad's history a little bit again too, back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s before the days of big snow plows. That's what they plowed with around here was the 60s and the 8s and the RD7s and all that. That's what my dad and grandfather actually plowed with crawler tractors down the road. So he found that one up in Upper Michigan and kind of fell in love with the looks of it because it's got the stock factory snow tractor cab on it. There's supposed to be a big auger and a V-plow that goes with it sitting in the woods somewhere up in Iron Mountain, Michigan, I think it is, or somewhere up there, but he spent 2 or 3 trips up there and never found it.
Like the name states, the Caterpillar 60 has a 60 horsepower, 4-cylinder overhead valve engine that could do 35 horsepower on the drawbar. They were built from 1925 until 1935, and they were the largest tractor Caterpillar had in production at the time. But if big isn't your thing, the family also has 3 small crawlers that you will have a hard time seeing anywhere else.
The 3 Nationals that you see, he read a lot of history books, and the National Tractor Company wasn't in operation very long in Milwaukee, Wisconsin before they got shut down due to patents and Caterpillar and everybody else. So there's not very many. As far as we know, there's less than 7 or 8 left in existence. They think there's only 5, and 3 of them are here. Started off with one, not sure exactly which one off the top of my head. I think it was the orange one, come out of like Tampa, Florida, that he found it. Then I think there was one out of California and one out of Southwest Wisconsin as the word kind of got out and he started doing more research on them. 2013, they were the featured tractors over at the Plainfield Threshery, because that was in honor of my dad, who was in ill health at the time. And all three of them, we ran through the parade right together.
And he took a lot of these soil pulls, went over to the local threshery and ran them over there. And that was his hobby. They traveled all over, my mom and him traveled all over the nation buying this stuff, and that was his hobby after he retired in 1988. We did donate a couple tractors to the local 139 down here, and they got them sitting outside in their building all painted up, and they're pretty proud of that too. And that was one thing we did to memory of my dad and mom.
Dad kept all his grandkids and even great-grandkids involved in all of it. I mean, the kids used to drive 7 or 8 or 9 of these from here 10 miles over to Plainfield, you know, at 2 or 3 miles an hour, tug, 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 all the way down the blacktop to get them there with 9, 10, 11-year-old kids that probably wouldn't go over very good today, but as a grandpa then it was great. You know, he put a little 10-year-old on a tractor and says, head for Plainfield, I'll pick you up when you get there.
Yeah, he followed
You know?
him over there with his truck.
He followed, so I mean, if there's some special tractors, that's kind of the ones like my son, his son, and even the next tier down, that's how they're connected with my dad, is which ones they drove to all them parades or thresheries or the local Elman parade. They're probably the cheapest tractors here, but they're the ones with the most memory behind them because they had Grandpa behind them in his truck.
You can see just what items from the Poggle collection will be sold at auction by visiting allmanvintagepower.com.